Hi everyone, my name is Brian. I'm back here again at Xiaoming's indie.monster.studio, and we're going to talk today a little bit more about effects sends or Aux sends and how to process them either before your effect or after your effect to get some more musical and kind of interactive results. And at the end of the video, I also want to share a really quick but powerful tip for how to adjust the overall effects balance of a mix and how we can use that to increase the sense of spaciousness or dry, close, intimate feeling for dramatic effect. Now with that said, let's go jump into Pro Tools here and I can show you a few simple tips. Okay, so we're here in Pro Tools. We have a session for a song called Distance by a band called Regret the Hour. I think this is a free multi-track provided by Converse. So let's look at a few ways we can process Aux sends. And please excuse me if I talk a bit slowly. There's some slight latency, so I'm hearing my voice with a small delay. All right, first up, let's look at how to treat vocal reverb.
Station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now.
Now I'll also mention that this song is basically unmixed still. We're just using it for the source. For the vocal reverb, we have a chamber here, and this chamber is being fed by the lead vocal. The reverb this time is a Cello Studio's chamber in Altiverb 7. Let's listen just with the stock Altiverb setting.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now.
Now the reverb level is set pretty loud, but that's just for the purpose of this example. I want it to be very obvious. You'll notice the reverb is set on the second insert, and that gives us the chance to pre-process it. I've put a plugin here, which is actually freeware. It's made by Tokyo Dawn Labs, and it's called Nova. This is a dynamic parallel EQ. What I've done here is put a high pass and low pass filter in, and a few more things, which I'll get to in a minute. First, let's just listen by bypassing and unbypassing the Nova.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now. Everybody's in the room tonight. You're still far away, and
So right away, you can hear the reverb seems quite a bit more set deeply into the mix. And this is because of the filtering. In addition to lowering the reverb volume, we've also cut out quite a bit of low frequency energy and high frequency energy using the high pass and low pass filters. And beyond that, I've done two more things here using bands 3 and 4. Band 3 is putting a little notch around 2.5K because I found this frequency to make the reverb a little bit strident or interfere with the other mid-range instruments.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now.
So in this case, I just didn't want so much of this frequency going into the chamber, so I added a small cut. But the more important thing here is band 4, which is actually a dynamic EQ band, set to a high shelving shape around 4 kHz. And this is essentially acting as a de-esser before the reverb to control the high frequencies and the amount of sibilance going into the chamber.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You You can come back now.
So as you can see and hear, it's ducking down all the S's and T's and any excess high-frequency energy, which creates a smoother reverb sound. It also makes it feel a little bit further away, which to me gives it more of a 3D sound.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now.
You'll have to experiment with the amount of de-essing or high shelf ducking.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now.
This is a pretty extreme setting, which is getting rid of almost all the high mids and high end, so it's a bit much in this case.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now.
For me, somewhere around here sounds pretty natural and nice, and it prevents any of the loud S or T or ch sounds from going into the chamber. Now you can apply this to any reverb, but it's particularly useful on vocals. After the reverb, I've added a second plugin. In this case, it's the Plugin Alliance BX Console SSL 4000. And really, the only reason I've added this is for some additional stereo width. Now the BX console has an analog mode, and all it does is it creates a different gain and frequency amount for the left and right channels. And these differences in left and right can create a subjectively wider sound. It's going to be really, really subtle, but I think it sounds nice. Let's try bypassed and then engaged.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now. Everybody's in the room tonight. You're still far away.
So the reverb now sounds a bit wider to me. Again, it's pretty subtle, but I think it adds to the sense of spaciousness. And this is something you can do after any reverb or delay send if you want a bit wider feel to it. You can EQ however you like, whatever fits for the track, to take care of problems or to bring out aspects that you find musical and pleasing. But again, the reason we're doing this is to add differences between the left and right channel for a kind of psychoacoustic widening effect. Now I'm going to mute this one and move on to a section in the bridge. So in this section, his vocal phrasing is a lot more spread out. We have more room for a longer, more effecty sounding reverb. And in this case, I have a send to the black hole reverb. You can see that here. It's a pretty cool, artificial, but really mysterious sounding reverb by Eventide. Let's listen with that on.
How can we even go on?
Pretty cool sound, not always appropriate, but I think it works nicely here. And it helps the vocal have kind of a floating, mysterious quality. But we can take that to another level by adding some artificial stereo width. So after the black hole plugin, I've used another free plugin by Polyverse. This one is called Wider, and it was created with the help of the psytrance group Infected Mushroom. I've cranked the width to 150% to get a really unnaturally wide sound. Let's check it out.
How can we even go on?
Hopefully you can hear the difference. Basically what it's doing is spreading out the sides while reducing the energy in the center of the stereo field. In this way, we get a reverb that kind of surrounds the vocals, fills out the side, while maintaining the clarity in the center. So it's not washing out his lyrics. You can use this on delays or reverbs, and again, it's not always appropriate, but it's kind of a cool thing to try if you want a really over-the-top effect sound. And move on to another delay. This song has a guitar solo in the interlude. Let's take a listen to it without any effects. So it's a well-played guitar solo. It sounds cool on the track, but let's try to give it some movement via a delay. We've created an aux send fed by the guitar solo. And in this case, we're using Soundtoys Echo Boy. Again, all of these concepts work with any plugin. The point is not to use these exact same plugins, but to take the concept and apply them to the tools you already have. With this delay though, we're going to hear that the guitar gets a little bit washed out, and the echoes are kind of making things a little bit muddy or congested sounding. So it does something I like to the guitar solo, which is that it creates a rhythmic pulse and also creates stereo width to kind of make it the focal point of the song here. But it's a little bit overwhelming. So after Echo Boy, we've added a compressor. In this case, it's FabFilter's Pro C2. But again, any compressor will do the job. And the key here is that we're using the key input. In this case, we have a bus also sent from the guitar solo so that we can sidechain compress or sidechain duck the echo return. In this way, when the guitarist is playing, you'll notice that the echo is turned down, and when he plays a long sustaining note or stops playing, the echo tails will come back up in the mix. For this type of ducking, the ratio and the threshold you'll have to adjust to taste, but generally speaking, a fast attack is going to be best, and the release time you'll have to base on the song and the part that's being fed into it. So what you also might notice is on the very last note, it seems to sustain a lot longer with this echo. So this is kind of a cool and musical effect where the last sustaining note trails off and kind of melts into the echo or melts into the background, giving it a sustain and a nice transition into the final chorus. All right, next up, let's check out some reverb on the snare. In this case, we've fed a plate from Reverb Foundry's HD cart. And again, whatever reverb you use, the concept is the same. Let's listen to a section with the snare playing.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now.
It sounds pretty good, but let's add the DigiDesign or the Avid Lo-Fi plugin in front of it. Now, the reason we might do this is, well, there's two reasons. One is we can add distortion and saturation, which will limit the peak of the snare drum. Drums in general have really strong transients, and we can kind of clip those off using the distortion and saturation parameters here, which will actually lengthen and control the dynamics of the snare before it goes into the reverb. Also, when you add the distortion and saturation, with this plugin in particular, it will cut some high end off, and that will make the reverb sit nicely in the mix and kind of get out of the way of the vocals and guitars, or the other mid-range instruments. Let's listen to it bypassed and engaged.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now. Everybody's in the room tonight. You're still far away,
Now, what you might notice is the reverb got noticeably louder, but it also changed the texture. It's a little bit crunchier sounding or dirtier sounding, and it also has a lot less high end. But now it's too loud, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that down a bit, and we can listen again.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now. Everybody's in the room
Bypass.
tonight. You're still far away, and no restless city streets, all this
And back
wild,
on.
lonely dreams. I won't follow them. Somewhere at the bottom of the deepest well.
Again, there's no rules here, so you can play with the amount of distortion or saturation, or use another kind of distortion or lo-fi plug that your DAW may have, and try to do something that sounds good to you. Basically, if we're cutting some high end out and reducing the level of the transient, we get a more consistent and darker sound going into the snare plate, and this will make it feel a bit further away, a bit deeper inside the mix, and also less peaky. So it's a bit easier to fine-tune the overall reverb level. I'm going to lower it just a bit because that was quite a lot.
Sunday in the station, and I'm looking down the tracks. You can come back now. Everybody's in the room tonight.
So right about there sounds pretty good to me. It's still a loud snare reverb, but I think it's okay for this song. Now, I'll reactivate or unmute all of these effects we have going and show you one last thing you can try. I have something here which I've just called the wet VCA, and its purpose is to adjust the overall effect or wetness level of the entire mix. So all of the effects or aux sends are going to a group called EFX, and the wet VCA is controlling that level. In this way, we have a really convenient fader. We can adjust all of the effects level simultaneously. We can boost them up, we can turn them down a bit, we can turn them off entirely, and most importantly, we can automate throughout each section of the song. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, in some cases, like in a chorus or a bridge or interlude, we might want a more wet and effecty feeling, a spaciousness that's a bit exaggerated. But in some parts of the song, it might work better to have a more intimate and dry sound. Let's check it out. I'll go to the last chorus and the outro for this. Okay, hopefully you could hear the reverb on the snare got ridiculously loud and then cut off. Let's listen to how it affects the vocals in the interlude or the bridge. Here's totally dry. Now we're adding a bit. Now we're adding a lot.
How can we even go on?
Then dry again. Now you'll have to use your own judgment for when to use this and how much to adjust it up or down, but it's a great way to add contrast or variety for each section of a song. And the more you can add interest to the atmosphere or difference from each section, for example, chorus, verse, intro, outro, I think the more the mix becomes interesting and feels alive. Okay, if you're still here, thanks for your patience in making it through the video. I hope something was helpful. Remember, when it comes to mixing or anything about art or music, there are no rules. There's no right or wrong way to go about it. Now, if you found something useful, I would encourage you to experiment with it more. Try to make it your own. Find ways to use it to increase the quality or novelty of your own mixing sound. And hopefully it's given you some inspiration or things to think about. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you guys again. Goodbye.